Assalamu alaikum viewers. I am Slim bin Rafi and this is my YouTube channel. Today's subject is where the whole world is talking about the peace in Afghanistan. As in my previous videos I have said that this piece of land, which is landlocked, has never been conquered, and the history goes way back centuries when Alexander the Great tried to occupy, but he had to just pass through Afghanistan and most of his soldiers were buried there and they died. Same thing happened to the British Empire, and 170 years ago the British faced the same thing. 40 years ago the Russians came to reach our warm waters and they faced such a defeat that I think the whole world said it broke the USSR to just mere Russia. So all the Russian republics were broken and they are now living independently as independent countries. Then came the Americans 20 years ago on the pretext that Afghans must be taught a lesson that 9/11 has occurred. Afghans had nothing to do with it. All those bombers who went and who hit the world towers, none of them was Afghan, none of them was Pakistani, but they just had to find a scapegoat and hit someone to please the American public and the world, to show that they are world powers. And I am going to just now retrospectively tell you what happens. Pride has always had to have a fall, and they're proud that they are the superpower has been broken into pieces, and they don't recognize how Pakistan helped them. If Pakistan had not made a sincere effort way back decades, Henry Kissinger would have never gone to China and had any relationship. China was not a member of the United Nations at that time. Pakistan negotiated to end the Vietnam War. And as you will see, the Ambassador Harun, who was at United Nations and who was representing Pakistan in his interview, elaborating this quite clearly.
I beg your pardon, on the 11th of September, because you gave us a list saying, we think these three people, help us find them, may attack New York. We went out of the way on the 5th of September, they were handed over to you, and the Americans announced from Washington, and the White House said, fantastic, we've got the people that could have harmed us, and by God's grace, nothing happened. Maybe there were others who couldn't do anything. But three key people are handed over, if you remember,
yes,
on the 5th of September. Did you get thanked for it? No. Were the people told of America the reason New York has been safe is the Pakistanis helped us capture these people?
So your point is that Pakistan, I don't mean to interrupt because you have such a wealth of information.
Who do you think helped end the Vietnam War? Pakistan. We opened the doors, we arranged with Peking for Henry Kissinger in 1969 to fly to Islamabad, fly to Peking in a Pakistani plane, and that started the settlement on Vietnam, after which you walked out of Vietnam. We are peacemakers. We are not, as people keep claiming, terrorists. There may have been a section of Pakistan led from that war against the Soviets into this sort of activity. You abandoned the area. We were left with something in our lap which we didn't have the wherewithal or resources. So you pointed to us and bullied, saying, okay, do this or this. I mean, come off it.
And do you think Pakistan, at least the part that's the Haqqani network, in other words, drones, bombing, negotiation, I hate to be so specific, but what's your advice?
You know, what I say to you is, let's be clear about one thing. I don't know what got Admiral Mullen started to talk at this late stage, but if I was a president of a country, and one of my underlings, after retiring from duty or on the eve of retirement, suddenly said, blah, 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 the first question I would have asked, you were 5 years or 8 years or 10 years, whatever, 4 years in that post. If you didn't report it then, I would say that is absconding from duty, isn't it?
Well, the Defense Secretary, Leon Panetta, has now backed off that a bit and said
because nobody wants to get involved in this thing. So let's put it this way, it's not but you know, despite that, I can identify one country to you which may unfortunately still stand by you and go in, and that's Pakistan. And look how you are treating us. I am so seriously saddened and indignant on how we've been treated. You can just keep saying, oh, you've done this, oh, you've done... Don't punish Pakistan time and again. You've done it for a long enough time. For what? We have paid a price you haven't paid. 9/11 pales in comparison to the number of deaths within Pakistan for standing by your side. And you can't recognize that? What a shame, if you ask me. Our economy recover. We have wasted our economy on you. It's time now that you are making these accusations, and we shall stop making these accusations. And for what? We don't want anything for ourselves. And don't keep calling us corrupt and inefficient and mismanaged. That's part of the game called Asia. And you knew all of that. You have dealt with us for 40, 50 years. We may be at an all-time low, but we're there because we have lost our own powers by sharing them with you in a war that we have, seen the rear end of. But I say to you, and I say it very clearly, let's not go into recriminations. It's going to get us nowhere. Let's try and resolve this problem. In resolving this problem, you must have Pakistan by your side. In resolving this problem, if you talk to Taliban as a part of the solution, you can't have a dual policy, talk to some Taliban and not to some. If the question is that Karzai wants to talk to Taliban, then how do you decide which Taliban that is? All Taliban, and you have already talked to Haqqani, as you have said earlier, and I know that. And you've talked to, and there's so much more that I'm still not saying.
Say more.
No. Let's give peace an opportunity. Yeah. As I said, we are peace builders. I end this program with you, Pamela, by saying we opened the door to China. You remember that?
Yes.
That's what brought the end of the Vietnam War. We brought China and America together. Today, China is your biggest supporter internationally, isn't it? You know how much of the American economy they're supporting with their money and with their trade and everything else.
And so your point is bring
My point
Pakistan
is we should have been in that entire, we should have come into the goodwill. We should have been a part, not that we kept, screws keep getting tightened on us so that we, become a nation of informers and a nation of yes-sayers and a nation of, no, let us return to our past, respect, honor, dignity and pride. And let us be beside your side then in sorting this problem. You cannot solve Afghanistan without Pakistan. And Pakistan cannot be free of its own troubles without Afghanistan first being free of all its troubles. That is the conundrum.
And on that note, and some good advice, I thank you very much for being with us. I thank Ambassador Haroon for a very insightful talk. We hope to follow up in the next few months. For CBS News, I'm Pamela Falk from UN headquarters in New York.
Did Americans recognize? Did they thank Pakistan? Did they help recover the economy of Pakistan? Did they pay compensation to all hundreds and thousands of people who lost their lives? What about those widows, the orphans? What about those people, they killed them. They attacked with drones, they attacked with helicopters, they attacked with B-252 bombers. And what they did? They brought the most lethal bombers called daisy cutters. And in Tora Bora, they said, we will hunt him out of Tora Bora just like a little rabbit. They were talking about an old man with a kidney failure, Osama bin Laden, who was their creation. So the wait now was ended with the help of Pakistan. History repeats itself. Many years after that, it's Pakistan who helped end the American war and American occupation in Afghanistan. I hope, O God, that the recent events of the last couple of months will teach this superpower a lesson and learn to thank a country which stood by them when the whole world abandoned them. They had no choice. It was Pakistan who released from the jail the Mullah brothers, and the negotiations in Doha, Qatar started. And that was the starting point in President Trump's, when he was a president in the United States. that they started to negotiate with the same people, they call them terrorists. The same event which was, in my personal humble view, engineered. It could not have been attacked unless it has been carefully organized by the Jewish intelligence and the CIA joined together, just to snub the Muslims and create Islamophobia, which is now everywhere in the form of ban on hijab, in the form of spitting and throwing the pig's head into people's homes, burning them, torching them, lynching them. Is that what the Jews and Christians wanted? And for that friend who twice helped them stop the war, I think the world should be grateful. I think the whole world should be grateful to Pakistan. A small, tiny country has done so much which neither NATO, nor United Nations, nor Security Council, nor any major power in the world could do it. And I hope with this video message.
Military outfit, they are normal civilians, and if there are some civilians in these camps, how is Pakistan supposed to hunt these people down? How can you call them sanctuaries? Time and again Pakistan has said, please take back these 3 million refugees. Huge burden on our economy. But Afghanistan was never in a situation. There's more or less been constant fighting for almost 40 years. So therefore, Pakistan is left with these refugees. Amongst these refugees, if they are Taliban fighters or supporters, how are we supposed to know? And we have been saying this time and again to the US.
Are you saying there's nothing that Pakistan could be doing to stand up to the Taliban after all these years? And again, the border has become almost porous for Taliban to be able to go back and forth. Let me ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, what relationship do you want now with the United States? You've said under no circumstances would you allow the U.S. to set up the CIA to have any sort of bases in Pakistan to support counterinsurgency. But are you saying no cooperation with the U.S. To fight terrorism?
Judy, let me first clarify. The border between Pakistan and Afghanistan is 1,500 miles long. It is one of the most mountainous countries, and it never had a border. This is called the Durand Line. People freely crossed from one side to the other. The tribes were divided by the British when this border was made in 1947. So there was never any border. Now what Pakistan has done, in order to stop these accusations that we are sending in people from here, this is the first time the border has been fenced. We have spent a huge amount of money to fence 90% of the border today. And finally we will have a complete border there where there was nothing before. Now, when you say about US having bases for counterterrorism, please let me make you understand this. When a country loses 70,000 people and is bankrupted by this war on terror, when we joined the US after 9/11, we do not have the capacity to have any more fighting within our border, any terrorism within our country, because when we were in the height of that war on terror, which Pakistan joined, there were suicide bombs taking place all over the country. The businesses collapsed, tourism collapsed. So what we do not want to be is part of any conflict. Now, if there's a conflict going on in Afghanistan and there are bases in Pakistan, we then become targets. We will then become part of a conflict which we were in the last 15 years, and we do not want. We want to be partners in peace, but not in conflict.
So are you saying, what sort of relationship do you want? What do you expect from the United States at this point? You're looking for a trading relationship. What is it that you want your relationship with the United States to be after this very fraught period of the last 20 plus years?
Well, Judy, the last relationship was transactional. Pakistan was more like a hired gun. The US says that we paid you, gave you aid, and that's why you were fighting this so-called war on terror. Pakistan, on the other hand, felt that here was a country which had no need to be part of this war. It loses 70,000. I mean, which other country has lost 70,000 people fighting for someone else's war? So Pakistanis felt that here we were fighting US's war, our economy devastated, aid was minuscule compared to the amount of money we lost in the economy, and yet we were blamed for the failure in Afghanistan. This is the Pakistani point of view. Now, Pakistan's position is very straightforward. We want to help, and we have helped, getting the Taliban to talk to the US, got them on the dialogue table, and this will be vouched by Zalmay Khalilzad, who's the American point person in Afghanistan and dealing with the Taliban. We have done our bit. Now, what we cannot afford now, if there is civil war, what US wants is bases in Pakistan, if there's civil war in Afghanistan. So, but if there's civil war in Afghanistan, bear in mind, more than the Pashtuns in Afghanistan, only about 1/3 to the Pashtun population, so 2/3 are in Pakistan. We will immediately get stuck into it. There will be terrorism within Pakistan in support of the Pashtuns. We do not want, apart from anything else, our country cannot afford it. We have just recovered from a desperate economic situation, and we do not want to go through it again.
I hear that message. At the same time, do you expect that if the Taliban does succeed in Afghanistan, you're going to have a country next door where women, for one thing, are not allowed to have an education after the age of 8, that you're going to have a country run by a group of terrorists, in effect?
But Judy, what are we supposed to do about it? I mean, here were the US for 2 decades in Afghanistan trying to force a military solution. The reason why we are in this position now is because the military solution failed. Now, what choices have we got? The best choice is that somehow we have a political settlement of Afghanistan where it is, as I repeat, an inclusive government. So Taliban sit down with the other side and they form an inclusive government. This is the best outcome. There is no other outcome because the military solution has failed.
And the latest interview of Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Imran Khan, will clearly emphasize this, that it is about time to stop blaming Pakistan, accusing Pakistan, when that's the only friend the America has in this subcontinent. And thank you for listening.